Hello everyone, this is Yoshi1 Kenobi who will be presenting you the standard deck guide for Omens of the Sky Nomad. Now this is the deck that I've been using at 98% Mythic, and it's really awesome. So the idea of this Omens deck is to play a lot of the Omens. So what are the key Omens? Well, there's Omen of the Sun, so it has Flash, like all the other Omens, and a pay 3 mana to scry 2 and sacrifice the Omen. And their middle ability differs for each of those. So Omen of the Sun creates two 1/1 human soldier tokens, and you gain 2 life. The gain 2 life is going to be quite important, as it's going to recur over and over again, and the lives from the Omen of the Sun is going to stack up. Then we have Omen of the Sea. This is the draw engine, which also fixes our draws. So whenever Omen of the Sea enters the battlefield, we scry 2, then draw a card. Scry 2 and draw a card is very powerful. It doesn't gain you any card advantage, but because we're going to be recurring our enchantments, this is going to turn into a draw engine. Then we have Omen of the Forge, which is one of the core removal spells of the deck. When Omen of the Forge enters the battlefield, it deals 2 damage to any target. And there's another card which I want to talk about, which is Omen of Kaya. Of course, it's Ode of Kaya, but since it's an Omen deck, I'm going to baptize it Omen of Kaya. It's a legendary enchantment which deals 3 damage to any target, and then you gain 3 life. And it has the bonus ability that whenever somebody attacks a planeswalker you control with one or more creature, you deal 2 damage to that player and you gain 2 life. So that's life gain on Ode of Kaya, life gain on the Omen of the Sun. We also have another enchantment, which is Bird of Meletus. Bird of Meletus allows you to search for a plains on the first tick of the saga. On the second tick, you create a 0/4 wall, and on the third tick, you gain 2 life. So we have 5 enchantments that I've talked about. 4 of these stick on the battlefield forever, unless you sacrifice them, and Bird of Meletus is going to stick on the battlefield for 2 turns. So why are we playing so many enchantments? Well, it's because we're playing 6 copies of Yorion the Sky Nomad. You heard me right, 6 copies! So there's 4 main copies of this mighty creatures, which says whenever it enters the battlefield, exile any number of non-land permanents you own, and return those cards to the battlefield at the beginning of the end step. Which means that Omen of the Forge, Omen of the Sea, Omen of the Sun, Omen of Kaya, and Bird of Meletus all come back to burst your opponent for tons of value. Well, tons of value for you, not so much for your opponent. Your opponent is more on the receiving end of the damage of your Yorion triggers. So we've seen Yorion before in the Yorion Jeskai Luca shell that was widely popular, where Yorion was played as the companion. And his right-hand man was Luca, Coppercoat Outcast. And we're playing Luca Coppercoat Outcast here. The +1 ability is mostly meaningless in this deck. You get to use it from time to time to try and fish for Yorion. The main ability is the -2. Exile a creature you control, then reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card with higher converted mana cost. Now in our list, we're only playing Yorion, which means that we're automatically summoning a Yorion from our deck when we activate the -2 ability. This ability was at the core of the Yorion Luca decks that was spawning Agents of Treacheries left and right. But you'll see that with this deck, spawning a Yorion is often just as powerful. And because Luca just spams Yorions with that ability, that's what I mean by that's why we have essentially access to 6 Yorions in a 60-card deck. And we have Omen of the Sea to try and find it. We have a bunch of other draw or scrying ability, so we'll almost always have access to Yorion to get more value out of our enchantments, which provides overwhelming advantage over our opponents. So let's go over the list card by card. Bird of Meletus, get lands, get tokens, which are used by Luca, good value. Omen of the Sea allows us to fetch the lands we're missing, fetch Yorion or Luca if that's what we need, fetch the appropriate removal for the matchup we want. It's very flexible, and when we Yorion, we get to trigger it again. Omen of the Forge is a 2-mana removal spell. Notice that we're not playing anything on 1 mana, so we really need 2-mana spells to be able to answer aggro. And we have Bird of Meletis and Omen of the Forge to do that. Omen of the Sun's also a good response to aggro, creating these blockers and gaining the life, which will eventually turn into part of our win condition. As we spam Omens of the Sun, we get to generate a bunch of 1/1 tokens that we'll get to attack with. We're playing 3 copies of Teferi Time Raveler because the card's just too good to avoid when we're playing these colors. Another important part of Teferi Time Raveler is that you get to use its -3 ability, cast a Yorion to refresh your Teferi. Then next turn you get to minus the Teferi to bounce the Yorion back in hand, cast the Yorion to refresh the Teferi, and get all value from your enchantment. And you get to repeat the process of bouncing your Yorion and refreshing your Teferi every turn. And you get to reuse all the enchantments on the battlefield, which causes you to have essentially infinite Yorion trigger at a rate of 1 per turn. And after a couple of turns of that, no opponent can survive. Oath of Kaya is the reason why we play black in this deck. It gives you life gain, gives you extra burn. The combination of having 4 Omens of the Forge and access to 1 more Oath of Kaya on the battlefield means that you can very often play a Yorion to burn for 7 or burn for 5, which is extremely powerful. Shatter the Sky. We're playing 3 copies of those. I used to play around with some Deafening Clarions, but because of the prevalence of mono-green decks, Shatter the Sky does a much better job of dealing with Stonecoil Serpents. So because of that, we're only playing 3 Shatter the Skies now. Elspeth Conquers Death is another enchantment that you get to reuse with Yorion. The 3rd chapter of Elspeth Conquers Death also allows you to revive a Yorion to get all the triggers back, which means that we're not really only having 6 copies of Yorion. If we run out of the 4 main deck Yorions, we can get them back when Elspeth Conquers Death, potentially start the Teferi loop and get even more Yorion triggers, and hopefully eventually overwhelm our opponent. So that's it for the main board cards. Now this is a 4-color deck. We're splashing black only for Oath of Kaya, blue only for Omen of the Sea and Teferi Time Raveler, and red for the 2 Luca and the 4 Omens of the Forge. So the deck is mostly white. Now let's go over the mana base. You have it here, where we're playing 4 Triomes, 4 Fabled Passages, which allows us to tutor exactly the land we want. And note that with Bird of Meletis and Omen of the Sun, we get to tutor more lands, if we need to. So we're playing 25 lands, and this is a best of 1 deck. It's made to beat the hard aggro strategies that are prevalent in this environment. And so we make use of the land balancing algorithm in your opening hand. And with these 25 lands, you typically get those 3 lands in your opening hand, which makes it very reliable. Now, in terms of the mana, we're playing 16 sources of white, because white is our primary color. We're playing 3 plains, so our first couple of Birth of Meletis are going to have targets. We typically want to avoid fetching our plains with the Fabled Passages if we can, to leave them for the Bird of Meletis. We're playing 14 sources of red, because we need the double red for Luca. And we don't need double color for anything else, which means we're playing 13 instances of blue and 12 sources of black. So we have at least 12 sources of our splash colors and 16 sources of our main color, which makes this quite reliable. So this is the overview of the Omens of the Sky Nomad deck. In terms of matchups, well, this deck is built to be the aggro strategies. So it's very good against Green Stompy. It's good against Red Deck Wins. It's extremely good against Ragdos Sacrifice. It does fairly good against Jund Sacrifice, although to a lesser extent, the Bonus Citadel combo is a little more troublesome. In terms of bad matchup, anything that goes over the top is a huge problem. So Temur Reclamation is a bad matchup. Bant and Sultai Ramp are also bad matchups. They're not unwinnable. I mean, we are playing Teferis, Elspeth Conquers Death, a lot of powerful cards. And in best of one environments, these decks have to make the concession to play a slower game with more control elements, which are mostly voided by our deck. So with that, let's go to the demonstration phase. Let's see if we can get a good match with Omens of the Sky Nomad. Let's see what our opponent's gonna be like. And it's Karashi, number 281. Ooh, this is awful. But we have an Omen of the Sea, and our opponent is going first, so we're gonna keep this. Our opponent is playing Green Stompy. That's a very convenient draw. So now we have all our colors. Your opponent has a Bark Hydrol. And we want to Omen of the Forge here. Let's play white. Lord of Garenbrig. We will respond by pinging that Felt Collector. We will take 3. And we will cast the Fairy! Time Rattler.
Sorry I'm late.
Get some time.
I've got it.
Probably Shatter the Sky. It's not the best, but
It's only a matter of time.
board wipe's a board wipe. Let's go fetch some red. Already have our 2 whites. Shatter the Sky! This really is just a 1-for-1, realistically, but it gives us some tempo. And our opponent seems to be started on mana, which will give us a pretty good advantage. Let's see what we can get with an Omen of the Sea. I want to keep the white open, in case we draw an Oath of Kaya. They do really like Oath of Kaya. So let's draw it. Land. Oath of Kaya into Hexproof. But that's alright. Alright, and we get bashed. I think we have to kill that questing beast. Yorion, Sky Nomad, do your thing! And this is why I like playing black in the deck, because Oath of Kaya is just fantastic. We gain back life. Ooh. Do I want another Oath of Kaya? Probably not. What I'd really like now is Omen of the Sun. Yorion's also fairly good. Next turn we'll get a Bird of Meletus into Yorion for extra value. Shifting Ceratops. Could also Bird of Meletus into Shatter the Sky. And then next turn we have a nice Luca. Not like that. Let's Shatter the Sky. Alright, well, we need to stop drawing Yorions, because then it makes our Luca look stupid. Nissa, Shaker of the World, is way too late to the party. Yeah. So we will start by poking Nissa. And then this is the true power of the deck. Yorion, Sky Nomad. For a one-sided board wide. The Oath of Kaya will take down the forest. The Omen of the Forge will take down Nissa. And we will draw a card and fetch a land.
Do not underestimate my strength fades.
And Omen of the Sun is exactly what we're looking for. And we're at a safe 10 life. Our opponent still has quite a few cards though. I'll give him that. Questing Beast. Swinging into our Yorion. And we get to Omen of the Sun. Summoning tokens. Luca. Might as well play this stat. Let's sack a wall. Because walls aren't going to win the game. Yorion yet once more. And we get the concession. And that's how it's done at High Mythic.